Welcome, everyone, to the Operators Podcast. This is episode 66, and today we have a special treat. We are going to be sitting down with Ryan Petersen, who is the founder and CEO of Flexport, one of the biggest freight forwarders in the world. It's a great conversation about logistics and what he's seeing on the ground. Also, want to give a special thanks to our three sponsors, Fulfill, Northbeam, and Postscript. Okay, without further ado, let's get started.
All right, let me talk to you about why I use Fulfill as my ERP. So the number one name in ERPs is NetSuite. To use NetSuite, it costs at least $100,000 a year. Like, honestly, a normal NetSuite contract is like $300,000 to $500,000 per year. Plus, you have to pay a third-party consultant, and it's always breaking or whatever, right? That's because NetSuite is owned by Oracle or Salesforce or whatever, and like it is the only way the company makes money, and it is a bloated piece of malware that has to support millions of people and millions of salaries and whatever, right? It's old technology from the 90s. Fulfill is modern, bootstrapped ERP built for today. So e-commerce first, Shopify first, that's the real. Before they were a sponsor, they've been my ERP for like 4 years at this point, and it's because they're the only modern option available at a reasonable price point, and they're thinking about the future, right? I mean, they haven't raised billions of dollars, right? I think they did one seed round one time, so they're a bootstrap SaaS company. The reason why that's important is I don't know if you've ever invested a lot of money into a SaaS tool just for them to go bankrupt, right? Or the news right now is that AMP just got bought by MailChimp, and you have to stop using AMP. And they just became the gold standard of email pop-up, and now you can't use them anymore. That's what happens with VC-backed companies. Fulfill is here for the long term. They're thinking with the long-term vision of this. And that's why I've used them for 4+ years, and I'm going to stick with them. Not only because it's a massive pain in the ass to change your ERP, so like I'm very incentivized to never leave, but it's because they're delivering good service at a good value with a long-term mentality. So what does that mean? They're shipping features that have the biggest impact, not features that, will help them land the next client that they need to be profitable. They're trying to make us happy so that we invest more and stay longer into this program. Investors aren't the customers. The customers are the customers. Kind of like Ridge, our customers are our customers. So that's why I love Fulfill. That's why I'm using Fulfill. They're investing in customer support, making sure the product is usable and staying at the top of the e-commerce industry. If you need an ERP and you cannot afford or will not pay for NetSuite, Fulfill is my option of choice. Thank you so much.
Ryan, man, I think all of us are fairly familiar with who you are, what you do, Flexport, all that stuff. I think we've been a customer actually in our companies. I think we might be actually a customer still. Do you want to just give us all the 3-minute, what is Flexport? Why the hell did you start this thing? And then we can kind of dig into a bunch of stuff that we want to chat with you about.
Yeah. I'm glad you give me 3 minutes because it's hard to put Flexport in one sentence. I've been trying to do that for 10 years and I haven't found the sentence yet. The best we've come up with, we're a technology platform for global logistics, but it's sort of a little bit vague. What we really do is help brands to manage their supply chain, the movement of goods and inventory through their supply chain. And it's all about moving the data in parallel to the goods as well. So you start with the order, you place orders to your factory through our platform, through your factories. The average customer brings 18 factories on board. We work with a lot of big enterprises. Those factories go produce the goods. We're not involved in that. Once they're ready, they place a booking with us. We ship cargo by any mode, air, ocean, truck, and rail, across 112 countries. And we just make that process super seamless and easy. Moving the goods means clearing customs, coordinating the movement end to end, make it seamless and simple. And then we now, last year we acquired Shopify Logistics, which has a fulfillment business. So that's our e-commerce arm, which is, we're operating out of 5 massive sites in North America, at around 1 million square foot each. So like really big buildings. And from there, we're doing injection into last mile networks and home delivery, as well as retail distribution. So delivering it to stores. So you sort of, one way to think of it is kind of like from the factory floor all the way to consumers' doors or into retail stores, moving the goods, making it simple and affordable for brands.
Was this always the plan? Like, were you always going to wind up kind of like going right to last mile versus just like managing the ocean and air?
I wanted it, the vision keeps expanding. Let's say, I think, in the very beginning, we started, how we started. I actually used to run an e-commerce business like 20 years ago, buying products in China, selling them on the internet. But back then it was mostly eBay. We were some of the first sellers on Amazon. What I remember, we must have been, because I remember when they allowed third-party sellers and you could sign up, and you used to have to pay $40 a month, and then you could create product listings in the catalog. I just thought that was like the most amazing thing, by the way, like that they're like letting me, like a hacker, add products to the Amazon catalog. This is kind of crazy. And so that's how we started in this space, was as a customer. I was very frustrated by the freight forwarders of the world. That's what we call this industry of shipping, ocean and air freight, is freight forwarding. And I just felt like they were all ripping me off, and there was no software to make it simple and easy, TurboTax kind of for importing. We started with just customs brokerage. You got to clear customs to get your goods into the country. That's where I found that a lot of the hassle was happening around paperwork, compliance. Our products were motorcycles, motorsports vehicles. So you have like EPA and DOT and state regulatory compliance issues that you have to deal with at the border in addition to customs. So I found that to be a nightmare. But from a business model standpoint, it was always, hey, once you're doing customs, you see all the transactions, you have the data, you're in a really good place to start going, okay, what other services could I offer this brand? We knew we'd get into freight pretty early. The last mile piece, I really wanted to do, but we were running out of, it's hard to focus. Like you got to be good at your core. And I was actually an investor in Deliver as an angel investor. And so I remember when Harish, who was the founder of Deliver, he came to the Flexport office like 8 years ago or something, and pitched me on, to become an angel investor. And I saw what he was doing, and I was like, man, I almost became sad. I was like, why can't my company do all of this? Like, why don't we put these things together? So then at the end of 2022, Toby, CEO of Shopify, called me. Shopify is a Flexport investor already, and called me and said, hey, we're thinking about doing something strategic with this business. We have a few offers to acquire it. Would you be interested? Would be better, like, you're already in the Shopify portfolio. And so it kind of like reignited something that I wanted to do before, but had more or less given up on doing, at least on any foreseeable time frame.
Why is that business attractive to you and not to Shopify? I've always wondered that.
It's fundamentally, we're just different cultures. We're much more in the physical world of operations and real world. We're more comfortable hiring non-software engineers, like operators, moving cargo, handling physical work. We already run a network of warehouses for our freight forwarding business. Shopify is a really good software company, and the types of stuff you have to do to run a warehouse are just really different. It's more, they are much more like vision, and Toby's very intuition driven, like has a vision, knows what he wants to do. They're not running that. I think they're getting more and more there, but they are not like the most metrics driven company in the world. And in fulfillment, you got to be metrics driven. You're trying to make, like, you got to get your costs down, down to the unit level. You make money in pennies at a time, and software is just not like that. You have a lot more margin to play with. And then the type of workforce, like I mentioned, is different. So, and then it also just fits our strategy better. I think Shopify's better. We're the official partner for Shopify for fulfillment, for e-com fulfillment, and they send us tons of leads. It's a great business partnership. But over time, you'll see Shopify benefits by having lots of fulfillment providers, and they were sort of competing with themselves on some level, or competing with their own market, with their own ecosystem in ways that maybe aren't ideal for them. And then from our standpoint, I don't think fulfillment as a standalone is that great of a business. It's just like, it's pretty hard. It's low margin. It's not that if it's not strategic, it's not that interesting. But as a node in like a broader network, we're moving cargo through from door to door, or this is a place that you can think about starting to really optimize a customer's supply chain So for example, we have the best data on supply side latency that we provide to our customers, meaning how long does it take what's your lead time on your goods? You're placing orders to your factories through us. So how long before those are ready? We can get vendor scorecards for you. How long are they taking? We know the transit time, and those are always changing. So instead of just like plugging 30 days into your little spreadsheet for inventory planning, we get you real-time data, trailing 90 days, whatever. And then, so we have the supply side latency. We're in a really good picture to then, if you can match that with demand side, to really help people with planning, like how many goods to buy, when to buy them, where to position them, how to make, and some of these models are actually, they're pretty old. Like people started developing these inventory planning models in the 1970s. Every business school MBA student gets studies that and has an Excel file for it. What's interesting with Flexport then is to be able to feed it real-time data, like what's the actual lead time, what's the actual transit time, what's really selling by SKU. We also have Flexport Capital, which is our inventory financing business where we make loans to companies. And I think that becomes way more compelling when you have the merchandise in your building. Should lower the risk on the loan and therefore lower the interest rate for the customer. So it should be a win-win. So yeah, there's a lot of reasons that we like the business. Though the day that Shopify announced that they sold it to us, I think their stock went up by like $10 billion or something. So I'm not sure.
It was a good day for them.
Yeah,
I'm
what
not
that
sure Wall
means for
Street
you.
agrees with me, but that's okay.
I just sold you a lemon. Hey,
Yeah.
Ryan, like obviously the way that you guys have been disruptive is you brought transparency to an incredibly opaque industry, right? Where it used to be like, yeah, we took your goods and we put it on a ship and maybe you'll hear from us in 45 or 60 days or whatever. And we've been customers, I think, since 2016. So we've been with you for a really long time. I'm really curious how the level of transparency that you're able to provide with all of the tracking and the use of software, how have you seen that enable customers and brands to make better decisions than they would be able to under the old model?
It's really, you see it sort of constantly, and it really depends on the brands. We have so many different types of customers. So some people are using this in manufacturing processes themselves, and they have like sort of just-in-time type operations, and they're bringing in components, and they really need to know when the stuff's going to arrive, because if the line goes down, the whole business is kind of screwed. So that's one example. In a e-com business, a lot of people have launches of new styles and launches in marketing campaigns, and they need to know when's this stuff going to get in so they can plan against that. And you'll see with all the disruption that's happening out there in shipping, between the Red Sea, most recently, we've had port congestion. We may have a strike later this year. Actually, just today, 44 containers fell off of the ship off of the coast of South Africa that were headed to Europe. So there's constantly things happening in your supply chain that you need to know about that are sort of outlier disruptive events. And then there's just basic planning, when making sure that you understand when is stuff going to get in so you can do inventory planning better. So that's the visibility piece. Now, visibility alone, I don't think is that valuable. It's a differentiator for us. It makes it easier. A lot of what we do is around communication and managing data. So getting many people, the average user on our platform, the average company onboards dozens. I think actually in the enterprise segment, it's over 100 employees that become users. They onboard many factories. They're able to communicate through this platform, get on the same page. So like you're paying invoices for your freight or your POs. You need to know what's happening with this. Like, is this invoice valid? Should I pay it? When you make a PO to a factory, for example, the money's always owed based on some trigger coming from the logistics. It's either like when the goods were picked up or delivered, right, but that's when the clock starts. So getting people data about that can save a lot of time. There's just loads of reasons why an enterprise wants to have more data about what's happening in their supply chain. And then our model, because we're using software to collect this data, it doesn't cost us more. So, from a business model standpoint, we try to be price competitive with other freight forwarders. Often we're cheaper, but you get the software for free. It makes it easier to manage things. And if we can beat the price and you trust the quality, reliability, I think it becomes kind of irrational not to use us. I mean, those are big ifs. Like beating the price is hard. It's a competitive industry, and quality is always job one. And I'm not saying we're perfect on that space, but if we can do those two things, and the software is free, it's sort of a no-brainer. So that's been our growth engine. We went from We're now 11 years since our first revenue, 11 years. We were the third largest American freight forwarder. And if you look at the top 100 in the world, we're the only one that was founded after the web browser was invented in 94. So, I mean, there's a lot of good companies. They have experience and global networks and footprints. There's a lot of advantages that they have. It doesn't guarantee victory by any means, but from a technology standpoint, they're just not tech companies. It's very hard for them to adapt.
Dude, not to flex on Flexport, but we're a customer and we just started shipping luggage. So we started shipping luggage from Vietnam to America, and we pre-booked, I don't know, probably 120 containers or whatever. And that was before prices started skyrocketing. So
Yeah.
I'm fucking in the green on this, man. I'm only paying like $3,000 a container, and Flexport's taking care of the rest. So
Well,
I'm a big fan.
We try to take care of our loyal customers with good rates and make sure that we honor contracts. We can't. It is a messed up market right now. The ocean freight market. Maybe a little context here. Like the price of freight went up 3x in the last 6 months, and
is this unprecedented, Ryan? Like the last 3 years, 4 years, is this unprecedented volatility?
If you include COVID in that, for sure, the last 4 years, the current market that we're in is precedented by what happened in 2021 and 2022, right. Of course. It's actually very interesting to see the emotional tone of the industry. Where in 21 and 22, everyone was yelling at each other and upset, and customers just could not handle the fact that somebody was breaking a contract and raising prices. Whereas right now, which is like, yep, that's how this industry works. And it goes both ways, like you guys are a good customer for a long time. So we try to make sure that we're like, hey, we don't want to lose our great customers and take care of people. But there are customers out there in the world, and this isn't a Flexport specific thing. This is the industry who, they sign a contract, and when the price goes down, they immediately break the contract and go ship on the spot market from somebody else. And then when the opposite happens, they get all upset. And you're like, well, look, man, that is one of the problems of the industry, is the contracts just like are not enforceable. And it's also a clear sign that there's not a cartel, that it is a competitive market in ocean freight, because of the fact that nobody can get their act together to make contracts enforceable in the industry.
Yeah, that's a very unique insight. Ryan, I gotta ask, everyone hates their 3PL. I mean, I think everyone used to hate their freight forwarder. I mean, no one loved their freight forwarder, but I mean, yeah. And then, so you've chosen industries that have very, very low NPS scores. I mean, getting into last mile fulfillment, I was quoted Shopify fulfillment over the past couple of years, and it makes sense why they got out of that business, right? Shopify has amazing margins, but it's already a weird stock. Is it a payment provider? Is it a e-commerce platform? Is it a app network? What the fuck is it? And then you added fulfillment, where they're lucky to make pennies, like you said. So yeah, I was just curious. Do you specifically choose the hardest businesses, or is that?
Yeah, I think so. I think there's a lot of mediocrity out in the corporate world and low NPS. We pre-COVID, our NPS was in the mid 70s for Flexport forwarding. It really dipped during COVID when transit times went to 120 days, and it was instead of 14. And we were charging people $15,000 to move a container. That you're not going to get a high NPS score when you do that. It dipped down. I'll be transparent. It dipped down to like 17, which is pretty bad. Although still the industry average is below 0, like in normal times. It's back up into the mid 40s, pushing towards the core metric that we track here. So mid 40s okay for B2B. It's not where we want to be, but we're still kind of brand recovery mode from COVID after years of that. Our fulfillment business has a CSAT in the 90s. We're doing an NPS survey right now. We hadn't built that muscle in that group, but the CSAT similar in the 90s. I do think that you should lean into. You don't make money doing easy things, by the way. Those opportunities have been absorbed, and it's too competitive. So I think the fulfillment space is competitive, but my view is that there's no one who's really taken a hardcore metrics approach to every aspect of it, besides Amazon, who's not great on the B2B side of things. They're not, in my experience and talking to millions of Amazon merchants over the last few decades, the sellers are not their core audience. It's the consumer.
What's up, everybody? Welcome to the Operator's North Beam ad unit. So 30 seconds, I'm going to tell you all about how if you have any problems with North Beam, you can directly message Austin, the CEO. He is there. He will set up your ad account. He will make your bet. He'll give you cookies. Really, they have a dedicated team of people, probably 30, 40, 50 reps at this point, who will make sure North Beam is working correctly and functioning so you can get amazing data out of this ecosystem. They will be more hands-on than any meta rep will ever be, and they're going to help you understand where your ad dollars are best spent, best positioned, and which ads are working. My team works with the North Beam team literally every day. They're in my Slack. Maybe you don't get the same level of support as an operator, but they will be there to make sure it's working. And if you're not happy at all, just email Austin. He will take care of you. We use North Beam every day. It's a benchmarking tool. It's super helpful for forecasting, daily pacing, inter-hour pacing. So we can see, like, if we just launched an ad in 2 hours, if it's working or not. That's what North Beam does for us. So thank you, North Beam, for the support. I'm customer probably number one. So thank you so much.
Well, one thing to add regarding North Beam, because we just went through a contract renewal with them on their specifically on the MMM. And we got a pretty sweetheart deal, and I expect them to come back to us and raise our price, and they kind of deserve it. I was like, let me reach out to the team, and see how it's going, right? Because I'm not in the day to day. I get feedback, and the team was like, they have improved the MMM so much since we started it that they were like, we should definitely pay for this increase. So. And my team hates every agency and most SaaS. The only person that hates SaaS, the only more than my team is Sean, Frank. But yeah, I mean, they came to us. They're like, hey, you guys got the sweetheart deal. We were one of the first MMM clients. And I was very, very pleased when my team was like, it's really working well for us. So that's my little MMM plug.
This is something that not many people want to do, and the profit margins are low. It's hard for a lot of reasons. Last mile fulfillment and running 3PLs. Is this part of the strategy that by doing this, it bolsters other parts of our business? Is this kind of almost like a loss leader part of your business, that by being able to offer kind of end-to-end service, that you're getting more people to ship and use the freight forwarding and other services you provide?
Yeah, I don't want it to be a loss leader. I think all the business units should make money and be good, healthy businesses as standalones, but it is modular and it does get better. Both our margins get better and the service gets better the more things that we can do for you. I call our sales process playing Battleship, right? You don't win the game by just getting one pin in there. You got to sort of we have a whole range of services that can help brands, and almost all of them can be leaders. Like, we have some customers who just buy customs and don't buy other services, some who just buy ocean freight, some who just buy fulfillment. But over time, you're trying to cross-sell all the things. It is much better. I already mentioned how it can augment the capital business. Freight forwarding customers are ultimately, these containers are moving onward into stores or into fulfillment networks. And so us being that routing, that packet switcher, the routing network for those things, we just in a great place to sell it. So that we've only owned the business for a year, and already close to 50% of all the opportunities, all the sales opportunities for the fulfillment business, formerly known as Shopify Logistics, almost 50% of those sales opportunities are coming from Flexport customers. And then we're also cross-selling back and forth. So it's a natural, and I just don't see a lot of competition that can offer that sort of end-to-end proposition that we have.
It doesn't exist. It's so fragmented.
Yeah.
Is the experience. Like, there's so many different kind of logistics networks that your cargo transitions between across the process. We're tied in with the biggest logistics networks in the world, with the Walmarts and the Amazons and the Targets.
Yeah.
But there are several handoffs, and what we've learned is every handoff, there's opportunities for stuff to get stolen, for stuff to get lost, for data to get corrupted. And it makes a lot of sense that the less handoffs between kind of systems, and some of those systems are quite advanced like yours, and some of them are shockingly archaic, like they were built in the 60s or the 70s, like or whatever.
Amazon.
And well, I mean, I don't know that I would call Amazon's logistics network archaic, but I do think some of the physical retailers, like you will have some experiences where it's like, really, you really still do this way, and it's like, yeah, that's what Bob set up in 1985, and we've just kind of run with that since, and put a little bit of software on top of that.
Yeah, and that's true. By the way, this is like their core business of doing retail ingestion of products into the network and selling them on. Like the periphery side of the supply chain where they're managing ocean freight, you'd be shocked. Like we work with a lot of the world's best companies, and before they got to Flexport, they were sending Excel files to place orders to their factories by email as an attachment. Still are, many of them. And we have this idea that the world sort of works the way, where you want to take things is like the vision here is really kind of, it should be much more like your electrical power supply. Like you turn on the light switch in your house and you are controlling a power plant whenever you do that. Like there's a probably coal-fired power plant somewhere in the world getting a little hotter just for you, generating that electricity on demand. You get that idea that like, hey, if I order a Ridge wallet on Walmart.com, it's somehow like there's all this sophisticated, crazy stuff in the background that's happening. Like that's where we want to take it, is like real time. You're sort of sending a signal back to the supply chain to replenish one more unit, put it into the production line, and start moving it through. But the reality for most big companies is that it's not happening. It's just sort of an Excel file duct taped together process, a lot of phone calls and stuff. The B2B, you mentioned sort of some of the big brands or some of the big retail chains that we work with in our B2B distribution business. We have 35, all the big box retailers and a bunch of specialty kind of retailers that we work with, and all the major marketplaces. The way that we've built this is so that you have a single pool of inventory. The big changes that we made for the Shopify logistics after we acquired it and rebranded it as Flexport Omni-Channel were, we made it first party. They were operating on a network of 40 third-party sites. We took these 5 big buildings and run it ourselves. So much higher quality and control. And then 2 is we added the B2B distribution. They were fully focused on e-com fulfillment. We made it so it can distribute out pallet level out to all the various retail networks in the world. And so you get a single pool of inventory that sits in one or all 5 of the buildings, depending on what suits your model the best. And then as you get orders with Walmart and Amazon, we have auto replenishment. So we're able to get from their APIs, what's your stock level for each SKU. And we'll put it on autopilot, keep you in stock on autopilot. For the other guys, because the systems aren't there, you have to manually sort of track your inventory there and send a signal to us, okay, replenish and ship a pallet. But we make it very easy. Don't have to worry about all the labeling requirements, all that stuff. And having a single pool of inventory means if you work with 5 different retailers, you don't have to keep inventory at all of them. You have one and we'll distribute out from there. And it's helpful. It's the same pool that is providing the inbound services. Ideally, we're doing it all for you. And so then it sort of reduces the number of moves that you have to do around the network.
This isn't trivial at all, by the way, that when you have been doing e-commerce, D2C, drop shipping type activities, wholesale B2B it's just different. It's a totally different world, and it's a totally different competency. When we transitioned from being an Amazon 3P vendor, we were basically taking containers and just dropping them at Amazon's doorstep in California, to all of a sudden Amazon sending us like hundreds or thousands of individual POs every week. And we were totally overwhelmed, didn't know what we were doing, had to build that competency. And so I think it's a good point that you're making, Ryan. There's a lot of people that are listening to this that have some kind of a digital business and would like to build out more of an omni-channel footprint. They would like to get into physical retail, and they don't know what they don't know, and that being able to find a partner that is really adept at handling wholesale orders, it is a different skill set, and it's really important. And you can set a bunch of money on fire in chargebacks with wholesale POs and physical retail partners if you don't have the right partner helping you to do it.
Well, they'll boot your ass out too. Like this is,
sure.
I think, like Mike, dealing with a Walmart or a Target, like there's so much risk for any brand that does not have that competency. There's an incredible amount of risk in
especially early on, because early on they're trying to understand, is the juice worth the squeeze with you? Like we're working with Unilever, we're working with P&G. These are these huge multinationals, multi-billion-dollar companies. They have all these processes. And so, okay, you're bringing us something that we can put on the shelf and we think can do 10, 15, 20% better. That's good as long as you're not an operational headache for us. As long as you have the capital structure and the, logistical abilities to be able to keep up. But if you can't and you're going to be problematic, then we'd rather just buy more from P&G. There was a point with Target, I guess this was 2022, where they went through a period where their fulfillment centers were basically full of stuff. They had ordered really poorly. They had a bunch of Christmas stuff arrive late. And we were told like, hey, we literally can't move things through our fulfillment centers because we've just got so much inventory. It's a total mess. And internally at Target, they just said, all right, the new kind of law of the land, the new focus is it was something like, I don't even remember their clever catchphrase.
Simplified amplify.
That's what it was. Simplified amplify. And simplified amplify meant, thank you, Sean. Simplified amplify basically meant we are going to buy from less people.
Yeah.
Like we are going to make our lives easier by buying from less people. So people ask me all the time, like, how do I get, physical retail distribution? Well, you have got to not just say my stuff will outsell somebody else's stuff, but you've also got to say, I'm worth the complexity of you taking on another vendor and on your supply chain, taking on that extra complexity. And a lot of the time that's the harder sell than the idea that you might outsell what they currently have on the shelf.
Yeah.
It's counterintuitive, but it's a real deal.
Yeah. And so we do a lot of work on that side of biz dev, sitting down with those teams. We're official partners for most of these big box retailers. Walmart, I'm speaking at their seller summit next month in San Francisco, actually. And making sure that we truly understand what their requirements are. For example, we're one of our newest partners is TikTok. A lot of people are selling on TikTok. I don't know if you guys explored that yet, but they have.
We talk about it a little bit.
I guess you talk about it plenty. But they have very interesting requirements we've been working through to make sure that, hey, we weren't set up as Flexport itself. If we mark something as shipped and hand it off to the last mile carrier, it should show up in TikTok system as shipped, because they need to. They have SLAs that you have to ship. You have to get a tracking label and ship it within X hours of getting the order, right? We were compliant. Our customers were compliant. But if the last mile vendor isn't providing the tracking info back fast enough, it wasn't counting. And so we've had to sit down and go, wait, as long as we say it's tracked, let's count us as the last mile vendor, which we effectively are. So it's that kind of work that you need to do with each and every one of these vendors to make sure, retail channels, to make sure that, hey, our customers ultimately going to be compliant. And it's not easy. It doesn't come for free.
I'll give another example of how this can play out through a supply chain. So with our Walmart business, we got the new kind of order for their mod, and okay, these are all the items we're going to have. We made forecasts with the Walmart team, and then you produce for those forecasts. You say, okay, we think we're going to sell this many units over the first 4 months, and we're going to do our initial order is going to be these amounts. And we did all those things. The product came over. Walmart sent in their initial fills. Initial fills are when they don't just buy like a weekly replenishment, but they're buying enough to kind of stock all the shelves. And about 3 weeks into the program, all of a sudden Walmart was sending us orders and we couldn't fill them. And it was like, well, why can't we fill these? This doesn't make sense. And the answer had been that Walmart, with their initial fills, they came in with their initial fills bigger than we expected. Instead of asking for 1 case of everything, they asked for 2 cases. And nobody had communicated back up the chain like, oh, wait, we expected 1 case of initial fill. We got 2 cases of initial fill. And so we were just looking at sales rates. And based on sales rates, we were like, hey, we're in good shape. We bought for these sales rates. We should be in good shape. But because Walmart did something unexpected that they hadn't done before with their initial fills, all of a sudden we couldn't fill their orders because they had overstocked some stores and we had a real problem. This is a good example of how, like, when you have more kind of simplistic processes, and when you have all these kind of compartments not necessarily talking to each other, it's easy for things to get missed. And then all of a sudden you've got a fire that you've got to put out. So I think, Ryan, the vision, I've always thought the vision that you had for Flexport was a very insightful, because the more that these pieces of data and different steps in the process are integrated and talking to each other, the quicker you're able to see when something's not flowing the way it should be.
And by the way, that's a great example of where you want to be able to connect it back to the supply chain side, because if you don't have enough inventory, maybe we need to get an emergency air freight shipment moved just so you don't lose it might not make unit economic sense, but you don't want to lose the Walmart deal. So let's get this thing flying.
Definitely, you would want a system that was robust enough that when Walmart came in with initial fills that were bigger than you expected, that somehow automatically triggers somebody to say, we need to build more.
Yeah.
We need to get more, and we need to get it here quick. And we just found out, hey, that's a hole in our system that we hadn't. And one other thing I will say, obviously I'm kind of, talking about being a fan of Flexport, but this is a case where it's like, you guys have literally helped us move thousands of containers over almost decade period. So it's based on our experience with the service. We are big fans. And it's interesting you mentioned the CSAT scores, that the Net Promoter Scores, how they really dipped in the COVID mess. Well, this is one of those situations where it's like, you don't have to be faster than the bear. You have to be faster than the other guy. Because we definitely had a period. I mean, I remember personally being like, hey, should we look at somebody other than Flexport? Is this Flexport? And we really looked around, and it was like, hey, Flexport's having their issues. But everybody, if Flexport has a cold, everybody else has, like, I don't know, bubonic plague right now. It's like they're doing a lot better, and they're a lot healthier than everybody else in the industry. And so I think even when the industry itself was challenging, our experience at least was you guys did a good job of managing.
Yeah, I mean, there's certain cases where we make mistakes. The worst part was that people who single source, like, usually people are trained, hey, you got to have multiple freight forwarders in the picture, keep everybody honest on price, et cetera. The people, because of the platform that we offer, you get a lot more advantage if you bring all of it here. You have let's simplify these processes. Let's have the data. Let's have the people in one place communicating. And we do a fair amount of index-based pricing to solve for the price checking piece of, like, let's make sure you're keeping us honest, use the index for that. But the people who really bought in and went all in, were 100% sourced with Flexport, then didn't have the picture that these other vendors were also screwing up and started. And that was the worst part about it from our perspective, is like we had done such a good job over a decade or eight years or so before the pandemic, convincing people, hey, you can trust us to go all in. And then we started to get people to go, hey, I can't trust these guys to do everything, and I need to go pick up other vendors and stuff. And
they had no counterfactual. Yeah. They didn't realize how good they had.
And so the ones who liked us the most were the ones who ended up disliking us, because they, the people who were only partially with us knew that we were doing just as good or better than everybody else. So.
Well, I can say that we did use other people for shipments. We tested other things, and that was ultimately what our team came to was, number one, Flexport's doing a better job holistically than these others, but also, like, you really do lose some of the benefit if you start fragmenting, right? Like that the tracking and the ability, the insight. Now, there were points, it's funny, I've posted this on Twitter, there were points where, like, the tracking almost like goes the other way and makes it more frustrating. Like, you have a really cool interface where you can track the ship all the way across the ocean, and, like, you use GPS, and it's like, I know that my container is right here, right now. But then, like, you'd watch ships come across the ocean and then go like this joy cruise from hell up and down the West Coast for, like, 8 weeks. And it's like, you're kind of screaming at the screen. But
what really matters is, when is that thing going to unload? And we've built quite a lot of, and ultimately what you care about is, when is it going to get delivered? And now we're trying to make it all the way, delivery to your customer's door that you really care about, to your retailers. Done a huge amount of work from a machine learning perspective to actually get better at figuring out when are these things going to unload, and not just being close to the port, but what's happening real time at that port. How long is it taking from all the other containers that we've seen pass through? And so there's a lot to do here. The sailing schedules that get published by the ocean carriers are pretty inaccurate. I mean, the ocean carriers themselves have told me they're like 30 to 50% accuracy is the best they can do. They don't. It's a hard problem, and the way these networks are set up is that the ship stops, at 10 ports or more along the way. And so any delay at any one of those ports is going to cascade through the system. It's there's a very interesting thing. We're actually hosting Hapag-Lloyd is one of the big ocean carriers, the German one, and their CEO is going to come on a webinar with us in September, and with me, I'm going to host him for sort of our little version of the podcast. And they're completely redoing their network along with Maersk to get rid of all the stops and make it much more like a hub spoke, like a shuttle service, where your container will get dropped but the ships will only make 2 stops. Is a very interesting bet that those guys are going to make.
So predictability goes way up.
In theory, unless something happens at the hubs, that's the big bet. I think is like, hey, well, if that port gets shut down, the whole network falls apart. But it's one of the more interesting things that's happening in ocean freight. So I'm going to host this guy. They're kicking that off in January. So I think it's going to be kind of a mess. I know ocean freight's boring, guys. Don't hate.
Yeah, you just said the most oxymoron statement. It's like it's the most interesting.
I want to see.
It's not the most interesting thing happening in ocean freight is people shooting missiles at the ships. Okay, you want some? Your industry's not that cool.
Yeah. Okay. The drone footage of Houthis taking over ships, like SEAL Team 6, like that is interesting.
There's some crazy stuff.
I bet you didn't anticipate you'd be in the middle of that with your job.
It's never dull, man, and it's pretty sad that what it's descended to, and it's really impacting supply chains. That's what's caused the price increase that you're seeing, basically.
Really?
Even
though it's not all routes, it's just because it's just that one route, right?
It's a lot of routes. So it's anything going to Asia to Europe, as well as Asia to the East Coast would typically go through the Suez. It either go Suez or Panama. Panama is congested right now. They don't have enough water in their canal network, and then. What happens though is even for the Trans-Pacific, which ostensibly is not affected at all, which is the main trade lane for the United States, that those ships have been pulled off because they need more ships to service. It takes longer, so you need more ships to service the network, and so they've pulled ships off the Trans-Pacific. It's caused prices to spike on every trade lane.
All right, I want to talk about PostScript for a minute. We switched to PostScript a few months ago. And the transition was completely seamless. And I have to say, like, the level of commitment they have to their clients is exceptional. They chased us for a really long time. So we're using their SMS platform, and it's gone off without a hiccup. Like I said, they're really committed to us. The pricing was very reasonable. And they are working on some really cool stuff with AI, and I think we should expect an announcement from that pretty soon. So check out PostScript if you're new in SMS.
Maybe you could talk about that for just a second, Ryan, because I think this is personally the thing that I learned through the COVID period that I didn't really anticipate is the interconnectedness of this whole system means that if any one piece ripples or gets disrupted, that it will literally like ripple throughout the entire system. So like you mentioned, it's kind of like the butterfly effect. It's like if you wouldn't think that, hey, the Red Sea getting disrupted is going to have a massive impact on prices of shipping from Ningbo to, somewhere in California, but it does because of the way that the system kind of adjusts and these things ripple out. So we've seen a lot of that the last few years. What have you learned by being, like one of the most connected people in the world at watching this happen in real time?
It's very granular micro analysis. It's not really done or even perhaps feasible. It's one thing to talk about the number of ships in the world and the overall capacity, but what trade lanes are they on? And how do those move around? They're fungible. Like I said, you can move the ship between different trade lanes pretty easily. But then it's very granular down to the container level. Like, do I have enough containers in that port on this day? If I don't have container, then I'm going to charge, you're going to, not me, Flexport, but the industry, you're going to charge top dollar for whoever's willing to pay the most gets the only container I have. I got 100 containers. I got 120 people that want to move a container worth of goods. Who gets to go? Whoever pays the most. So your price of shipping might be one thing, but you have to pay extra for equipment. So the equipment is the container and the chassis, the trailer that hauls the container around. And that's, you got to have the right number of containers in the right port on the right day. And so one disruption or a massive disruption like we're seeing in the Red Sea, it completely changes everything because now all of a sudden you need more containers. These containers are out at water for longer. And you need the berthing slots when a ship arrives at a port. Those are all reserved in advance. And so if you suddenly change every port where every ship is going, your appointment system's all screwed up. You can't just like switch it up overnight. And these companies in this industry are just not technology companies. They're not running modern software that can adapt, that can use like the latest machine learning to do route planning. And they're starting to. Actually, Google has a pretty cool product called OR tools that we use quite a bit in our planning systems that can be used for this. And they actually explicitly made a version for container ship route planning that hopefully more container shipping lines adopt. And then the interesting thing probably about from a supply demand economic standpoint is that freight is just super inelastic. Like you don't ship more stuff because the price of freight gets cheap. And in general, you don't ship less stuff when the price gets expensive. Like you've got a business to run. If you can make money on that product, you're going to ship it. You have to accept it as an input variable. You're not really changing your business model. And so when the demand exceeds supply, the price can go way, way up. And the price can get set by that marginal buyer who's willing to pay the most. The Apple, as one example of many, but Apple makes a lot of margin. For example, they just make a lot of money on their phones. Everybody knows that. And so if the price goes up, they're not going to blink at paying the market price. And a furniture company maybe will actually ship less stuff because there's only so many couches, and you can't add $1,000 to every couch. They won't be able to sell it, so they'll just ship less stuff. But in general, most companies, if you have a good business model, you're just going to ship more stuff. You're not, or you're just going to ship the same amount of stuff. You're not going to reduce it because of the price of shipping. So it can make the price very volatile. And on the flip side, when the demand is lower than the supply, there's basically no marginal cost to shipping one more container on the ship. Costs some amount to load it. There's a little bit of extra fuel cost, but like basically no marginal costs. And therefore, if they're at 90% full, they have every incentive to just like discount like crazy for that last 10% of containers and just make sure that they sail as full as they can. So it leads to a real boom or bust kind of model. And then add to that, the assets themselves, the ships last for like 30 years or more. And so, you're making inventory planning decisions. It's hard enough to plan next season, whatever, this quarter, this year. These guys have to make a decision of 30 years on this $200 million capital asset. How many of them do I need? And you can't predict next year's sales, much less, 30 years, what's the economy going to look like? And so you get these boom or bust patterns where, they made a lot of money in COVID, then they bought so many ships. I predict, by the way, we talked about high pricing and what's happened with the Red Sea. I have no prediction about what will happen with the Red Sea, but I do predict that the price of shipping is going to come way down next year because there's so many new ships coming.
Ryan, I mean, I don't know about you guys, but what's coming up for me is you've got what you're describing in these, like this inelastic machine, right? That is moving goods around the world. And then you have all the geopolitical risk that's out there. There's this conversation that we've been having around like domestic manufacturing are we just and then there's like the rising cost of wage in a lot of like in China where a lot of people make their goods. So like it's not getting price. It's no longer price competitive to make product in a lot of places. So like, are we going to see, in your view, more and more product being made local to where they're sold? So it's not just an American thing, but like globally. And is that just going to be a result of like these trends hitting all at the same time?
I don't know that the shipping costs will be that reason. It's still cheaper. I was talking to a customer yesterday. They told me it was cheaper to ship from Australia to the US than it was from Mexico to the US. Ocean freight's just cheap.
Yeah, it's cheap compared to trucking.
Trucking. And Mexico does not have, one of the interesting things that I've learned recently, the United States has more navigable rivers than the rest of the world combined. We don't really use them much for container shipping because they don't point to the West Coast. They point to the Gulf Coast. But as if Latin America does become a more important sourcing region, we should see container services running up and down the Mississippi and hitting every single city inland. It would be pretty cheap and efficient. But so the United States has more navigable rivers than the rest of the world combined. Mexico has 0 navigable rivers. Just a curse of geography. It's all mountains. And so they don't have a great road network. It's just, it looks good on the map because it's close to us, but it's not great. I think the thing that to follow here is just going to be robotics. Like if robots are so cheap, then there's no advantage to shipping. You might as well make the goods really close to home.
Although ironically, the person making the country making all the investment in robotics is China.
Yeah.
Like if you guys have seen it laid out, investment in robotics by by country, China is like
I don't
double the next three countries combined.
Yeah, for sure. Well, they have demographic challenges. They don't have
they're not going to have the people,
they're
right?
declining population, so that makes a lot of sense. And Japan did that first, and Japan went even further. Japan just said, "Hey, we're going to be the number one manufacturer, but we're going to use your workers in Tennessee and Arkansas. Like, we're going to set up factories in the United States. We don't have any workers here, so we'll just use yours."
Yeah. So what's your take on Temu, Ryan, and the rise of Temu? And you posted on Twitter, I think, that just some insane percentage of the air freight is coming from the Shein and Temu type e-commerce sites. So where do you see that going?
Yeah, the top the e-commerce volume from China is now over 30%, depending on the month. 50% of all the air cargo in the world is direct to consumer e-commerce parcels that are being injected into postal networks and delivered. They're not stopping at a fulfillment center, and they're just doing fulfillment directly from origin. By the way, it's mostly powered by this regulatory statute that says that de minimis exemption, which means any product under $800 doesn't have to pay customs duties. And that rule exists basically to facilitate like hand carry. Like if you go travel internationally, you bring something back. If it's under $800, you don't need to get a customs broker involved and classify the goods and file an entry and pay duties. That it's not just from China. You see, this stat is a year old, so I bet it's a lot higher. A year ago, when I saw the stat, 30 of the top 100 Shopify brands were doing international fulfillment out of Mexico or Canada. Because you can also ship from there and get the same exemption from duties. Yeah,
we do it.
Yeah,
but I'm Canadian, so it makes sense, right? Yeah.
So I don't know how much of the Temu stuff is really powered by the duty exemption. At the end of the day, duties are important factor, but like they're not. You guys are going to make and sell your product whether or not that exemption exists. I kind of think that might be the same factor for them, that it's really more about the supply chain innovation of bringing these massive numbers of domestic, very low cost factories, cutting out the brands, making it just dirt cheap for consumers to buy stuff from factory. That there's as much innovation from that as the duty exemption thing. I haven't studied it enough, but we work with a lot of them. We work with I think 6 or 7 of the top 15 e-com companies shipping from China. Because Flexport is really well positioned for this. We run our own aircraft out of China, 9 flights a week on 747. We have best in class customs brokerage. And then thanks to the Shopify logistics acquisition, we have great rates for the last mile. So we've actually built the product to be able to inject it direct to consumers. So we're a major enabler of this. And we haven't yet launched in the Mexico fulfillment center, which it's a capital intensive investment that we're navigating right now. If I had certainty that this law wasn't going to go away, I would have already launched the fulfillment center down there. We're watching closely in Washington. What's the pulse, or what do people want to do?
Do you think it goes away? Like, what's your bet?
Amazon's getting into it.
Yeah, totally. I don't think it goes away. I don't think it goes away. I could see them targeting China, or making it so that if you're subject to the 301 tariffs that Trump first put in, that Biden just renewed, and that Trump is threatening to escalate, that then you couldn't use it. There's a couple of angles that might play out in that regard. The reality is, if those are hitting your product, people are already starting to talk about shifting manufacturing to other countries anyways, and it would still be valid, but from other countries, and still be able to do the Mexico thing, for example. But I don't know, man. We have we have eyes and ears on the grounds in Washington trying to figure it out, but we haven't gotten great insight of what's going to happen.
So are they cracking down? I think I've read that, Ryan, that they're really cracking down on checking things coming from overseas, because there had been some abuses, some people like sliding things in under this exemption that really shouldn't have been exempt. Is that accurate?
There was a few reports. We had, I think I saw 15 brokers either had their license suspended or lost it. Customs brokers. There was some real non-compliance happening, and it was basically when you do a de minimis entry, what's happening is it's called a manifest entry also, because there's a manifest of like, okay, I've got 500 parcels or 200 parcels on this pallet. And I'm going to clear that. If I had to do 200 customs entries one at a time, the customs broker, the math wouldn't pencil. The cost per parcel goes way up. So you do a manifest clearance, you clear it all at once. Because there's no duty on some level, and maybe in someone's brain, they thought like, well, there's no duty anyways. Who cares what classification code I use? Because there's no duty. And so there were companies that were just going copy paste, applying the same duty code for everything at scale, tens of thousands of parcels, all the same, no description or the same description for everything. And it raised red flags. They dug into it. And then what I heard was that CBP customs requested a hold on packages. And the companies didn't have the control to go, yeah, let me grab that package for you. I'll hold it so you can inspect it. And they just went ahead and delivered it. I mean, that is just like, you cannot do that in a customs. You need to have real control over the merchandise. And if customs wants to hold something, you present it to them and let them inspect it. And so it was really about the brokers, their ability to actually run a compliant process. What was very interesting, we had a few customers come to us and reject our services because we were insisting that they classify, that we classify the products. And they were like, no, these other guys will do it without doing that. And I'm like, well, okay, go ahead, And I haven't tracked down that particular company to see what happened, but I was very proud of our compliance team when that happened. I'm like, great, this is, especially when I saw the other guys get blown up.
There were times where we have a product that could be classified under 1 or 2 or 3 different codes. And your team has really worked with us to figure out what is the proper classification. Now, obviously, when you're a brand, it's really easy to be like, I want to be under the classification with the lowest tariff, right? Or the lowest duty. But sometimes that's the wrong interpretation. And so one of the ways that having a good freight forwarder, having a good partner there, is that they're going to work with you and sometimes tell you bad news that you need to hear, because if you're importing something under the wrong code, eventually that's a huge liability that can eventually come due where you're going to have to pay the piper.
Yeah. It's like having a lawyer represent you, and we're not lawyers, but it's a similar concept where you're like, hey, you got to make your case. And you can go to the government and get what's called a binding ruling that says, yes, this is in fact the duty, and we'll help you make the best case that we can. But we have to follow the law, just like the lawyers. Like, they can't get you out. You commit a crime, lawyer's not going to get you out of jail if you're guilty. But the law is never that black and white. These customs classification codes, you got to make your case and present it to customs in the best way and hope that you can get the ruling that you want.
I do remember Flexport helped us with this when we launched Lomi, because Mike, you can imagine. There's no customs code for a Lomi. Like, the category didn't exist before we built the damn thing. So we're trying to get this into the United States and into Canada. And they're like, well, what is it? And it's like the closest thing on customs code was like, it's a space heater. And I'm like, no, it's not.
It's the electronics category. Customs, the classification codes, they're called the harmonized schedule HS codes. It's actually a really interesting sort of history view, because if you look through it, there's like 80, it's just been amended over time, right? And so you can see, because these things have existed since I don't know when the dawn of it was, hundreds of years ago. And so you can see that there are so many subcategories of certain things. Like there's multiple chapters on like apparel, and it gets, and then all of electronics is grouped in one chapter.
Yep.
You'll have, and it's like there's just like not enough.
It's like things with a plug.
Yeah, right? Pretty much.
That's pretty broad.
Yeah, it's also sort of a miracle system, because we've managed to, through the World Trade Organization, managed to get all the world's countries to kind of align on a standard for these things. That your code is, at least the first 6 digits of your HS code are universal across all countries. It's sort of a miracle. I mean, from doing global business globally as a brand, if you had to reclassify in each and every country, it would be very hard for your business to go global. It would just be a huge nightmare. It is something that the last 2 digits can change. The last few digits of the code can change, but that's something that we manage in our product library for you, is like track all that and make it simple that by country, how is this thing classified, what documents are needed, et cetera.
So Ryan, I got one more question for you. You have a really unique trajectory. This show is called Operators. You are truly an operator. Like you said, you've operated an e-commerce business. You started this company that has gotten huge, had a tremendous amount of success. You stepped out of operating basically, and then you stepped back in. And, like not necessarily asking you to go into all the details of all those transitions, but more, what have you learned from being an operator a lot of your career and then stepping out of it and coming back in? How has that caused you to think differently about being an operator?
Yeah, early days of Flexport, one of the lessons I always taught was that you got to work on your business, not just in it. When you're really small, you're in there, you got to do all the work yourself, but you need to split half of your brain and come up here and look down at yourself and go, how am I doing this process? How could I train someone else to do this process? How could I make this thing easier? How do I work on the job? And that is a lot. Basically, when I became an investor, I'm like, I had to just live up there full time, just looking at how are these companies run? How is the world look from that seat, and less like just do the job constantly. I think I'm like the world's best individual contributor. I don't know if I'm the world's best manager or leader or other things, but like if I just need to get work done, like I can grind and get it done. But that's not that useful of a skill set as you grow in a leadership role. I think it's not very useful at all as an investor. I'm not convinced that working harder actually benefits the investors. Having better intuition, better network, better skills, but like I don't know that more hours in the seat helps that much for that. I think one lesson that I did come back with was I spent a lot of time. I'm not a professional investor. I've done 150 angel investments and been successful at it, but angel investing is very different than venture investing, which is very different than like running a public market strategy or something. But I spent a lot of time just reading books about investing during my 6 months where I was working with Founders Fund, and I'm still on the venture part. I'm still a venture partner there. I'm still on the team. I think getting a really good sense for how investors view a business, and ultimately it's about return on invested capital. It's one thing to make a very high margin profitable business. That's great. But if you don't have a way to reinvest those returns in your business to generate more profit in a way that compounds, you're not going to be that valuable as a company. You'll be a high margin dividend business, but at the end of the day, it's really about the return on invested capital. And taking that lens of everything that we do has been, as I come back to this job, of like, we've made some hard choices. We've improved our EBIT by almost $700 million in the last 10 months since I've been back in the seat.
Wow. All right. Say that again. You've improved your EBIT by $700 million
almost
in 10 months.
Not 700, but almost. In 10
months. Okay. That's
without raising prices
crazy
to our customers. In a few cases where we were losing a lot of money on a customer, we had to change some things, but that was pretty rare. It was mostly through running better bill audit processes with our vendors, through really dialing the way that we charge for all the services, so that if I'm doing something for you and you're expecting to get a bill, I make sure you actually bill you for it. And then, which doesn't count as raising prices in my view. We cut a lot of costs. We let go of a fair number of people. And then we grew the business. And so but now you go, okay, as we start to generate profit, we're going to be profitable towards the end of this year. As you start to generate profits, what are you going to do with those profits? How are you going to reinvest them?
Right. Right.
And that's one of the exciting things about our business from my perspective, is that it's like, man, we got tentacles everywhere. All over the world, and we could expand geographically.
It's a capital intensive business.
Potentially.
Like you actually, compared to a lot of businesses like technology companies where you spin off all this cash, like you're saying, high margin, you spin off cash, but there's nowhere for it to go. You actually have probably a 10, 20, 30 year plan of how you could invest tens, hundreds of millions of dollars annually in infrastructure, right?
Yeah. And you don't want to, the types of capital intensive things that we do probably don't generate the best returns of everything that we can do out there, but it's a great lens to have. It's like, okay, yeah, the fulfillment team wants to launch in Mexico, Canada, and Europe, for example, or India. Like we should make it super easy for Ridge to sell on Flipkart and just make that one click, right? Things like that we could go do. But what is the return on capital of that versus more software engineers? My customs team's begging me for more engineers, more salespeople. Should I launch in Australia? We don't have an office down there yet. I've got this nice portfolio of bets that we could make. And I think having that investor hat on is really, it's a great way to look at the business. As an entrepreneur, I'm just like, yeah, let's go, let's do it all. And we spent 10 years doing it all. Now we're going to be much more disciplined, much more focused, much more like, well, what's the return on capital for this? We overexpanded in a lot of cases. Like we had too much warehouse space. We just kind of like went out and signed warehouse deals saying, yeah, we should have a warehouse here. I think the investor hat on, you're looking at return on invested capital and going, well, maybe it's better to partner with somebody else's warehouse and take a corner of it. Things like that I think I come back to the job with a lot more perspective.
It's a great point that capital allocation becomes, really the most critical, or one of the 2 or 3 most critical things you're doing as an operator as you get into a bigger and bigger business. I mean, you mentioned it, but to build a big business, you have to be a great individual contributor. And at some point that kind of can work against you. And so transitioning to where you're standing over the business and you're saying, okay, here's where I'm placing bets across diversified things. And I liked what you said, because I feel this in our business right now, that what the nominal amount of money that I'm able to get invested is as important as the return is, because all of the return profiles I'm looking at are better than public markets, are better than things I can do outside of the company. Mm-hmm. So it might be like, hey, this one's 40% and this one's 25%. So obviously the 40 is better than the 25, but really I just want to be able to get the maximum nominal amount of dollars invested back in the business, because all of this is better than what I would do if the money was coming out.
Yep. But having discipline too, to go, okay, it pays 40% back, but to do that, by the way, it needs to go for at least 3 years or you're not getting to 100. Right. And then it's a rare number of things that can then take the 40, generate 40% every year for 20 years. But if you do that, wow, you're gonna, Warren Buffett did 20% for 50 years and he became that. Yeah. He became Warren Buffett. So if you can get 40% return on capital, it's amazing. But you got to have that compounding engine that you can keep doing it and doing it and doing it. Very, very rare number of businesses that can do that in the world. I think Flexport should be one of them, but it's also, to your point, can be capital intensive. If you're not careful, assets a typical warehouse doesn't generate 40%. I mean, it might generate to 8% or something. So you have to be really careful to like, how are you actually going through your business, looking at the portfolio? We're not dogmatic. We'll invest in assets where it generates some kind of return. I don't need 40% on everything. But it's really got to change the customer experience if it's going to be lower than some hurdle for what my investors need. And my investors are still venture investors. They want to make 30% returns annually, right? And so that's my bar, is kind of 30%. But then certain things that are like really changing the customer experience, doing something that really differentiates us, then we'll invest. The warehousing was a decent example where before we had warehouses, this is not the fulfillment warehouses, but our freight forwarding warehouses. Before we had one, and we have like a half a dozen of these. Before we had the one in LA, that was the first one we got. We were working with third-party warehouses. So if you had to deconsolidate the container in LA, it was taking us we would just lose sight of where these goods are. And then we couldn't get these guys to act within 3 days to get the cargo out the other way. And it's supposed to just get unloaded, get put in a container, and leave the same day. We run it ourselves. We get that process way down within 24 hours. And we keep tightening the SLA on that and trying to get these really tight turnarounds. So that's a little bit hard to quantify from a return on invested capital. It's upgrading your quality. It's helping grow your customers, allow you to charge good margin for your customers because you're providing a good service. So.
Ryan, this is awesome,
man. This Thanks, is just I even love that we're ending on this ROIC thing, which we don't talk about much here, which is super cool. Yeah. This is great, Ryan. Appreciate the time.
Yeah, appreciate you guys having me on. It was great. I think I just saw I saw Sean on Twitter post, or maybe it was you, Mike. I forgot. So he's looking for someone to come on. I'm like, I'll come on you guys' podcast.
Man. Yeah.
Glad to be here.
Yeah, this is really great. It's a totally different lens than what we're used to talking about. So it's pretty awesome. We'll have to have you back on. I got so many more questions for you, but we're out of time.
Cool. All right. Let's do it again, or we can we'd love to create some more content with you guys.
Yeah, man. Yeah. This is great, Ryan. Appreciate it.
Thanks for joining us, everyone. Great episode and some really great insights from Ryan about what we're seeing when it comes to logistics and freight forwarding. Hope you guys will be with us next week. And want to say one more thanks to our sponsors, Fulfill, Northbeam, and Postscript.